Breaking tonight, dramatic new pictures of a new round of disturbing news out of Iraq. We are getting reports that our airstrikes may not stop these terrorists, and eyewitness accounts that suggest that our effort to help thousands of Iraqis hunted down for their faith is falling desperately short tonight. Welcome to the Kelly File, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum, in for Megyn Kelly. It has now been more than 7 months since the Kelly File first reported on the rise of a horrific new terror group in the Middle East. What started as an al-Qaeda offshoot morphed into a bloodthirsty army known as ISIS, launching an offensive over the last year that allowed them to capture Fallujah, Mosul, and other Iraqi cities, building the world's first terrorist state in a region where Americans spent blood and treasure to liberate Iraqis from the terror of Saddam Hussein. It has been a little less than a week now since President Obama announced that we would do something about it.
Today I authorized 2 operations in Iraq: targeted airstrikes to protect our American personnel, and a humanitarian effort to help save thousands of Iraqi civilians who are trapped on a mountain without food and water and facing almost certain death.
And so the airstrikes began, and the food drops followed. But today, the Pentagon admitted that the terrorists have now been changing their tactics, blending in to the population, denying our jets an easy target at this point. And that humanitarian mission, look at some of the video from the mountaintop. Excruciating, and it just gets worse. Today, eyewitnesses said that 70% of the thousands who took flight are dead. Others are buried alive, and hundreds of women have been taken away as hostages. And those who are left are literally dying of hunger, thirst, and exposure as efforts to get them aid are falling desperately short. Reporters today pressed the State Department about what happens now.
We're looking at, quite frankly, at
everything.
Everything.
Okay.
Yes. It is so dire that we are looking at everything.
Okay.
Tonight we're going to talk about what's being called the third war in Iraq, the expanding terrorism, the gut-wrenching human toll with General Jack Keane, Congressman Peter King, and Tony Perkins. But first, in a Kelly File exclusive, this is an incredible first-hand account of the awful reality. Iraqi Christians and others trapped by the terrorists on the mountain that is now a graveyard. Watch this.
This is where they are hiding, the Sinjar mountain range, forbidding and vast. This, our first glimpse of Yazidi refugees seeking sanctuary in searing 33-degree heat. We saw some camped out in a dry riverbed with only a tarpaulin for cover. Others had found a road in the middle of this wilderness, a road they dared not take. Instead, they waved at us, desperate for food and water to be dropped. Some of it may have smashed on the rocks below, but with so many deliveries to make, our helicopter did not stop to check. Then it touched down for 5 precious but awful minutes, and the scramble to rescue as many as we could began. An old man hurtled himself towards the door, even as boxes of aid were still heading out. Small children became trapped. I found myself dragging them, drooping and dehydrated, towards the back. This helicopter in such danger itself that one of the crew began kicking and punching to keep the refugees at bay. The bodies are piled on top of one another, but amid much screaming and shouting, 25 Yazidis have got out alive. And then the crime starts. We have left hundreds behind. How many in total are still on the mountain is impossible to say. From below, jihadists opened fire on us, and a machine gunner replied. Even here, thousands of feet up, these Yazidis, who have lost everything, cannot call themselves safe.
These are dangerous helicopter missions, and there aren't enough of them. But the risk is that unless more aid flights take people off this mountain, then hundreds, if not thousands, may die.
So these are the fortunate few. Many of them told us they had been trapped for 10 days. And far below, those who begged us to take them, but never made it aboard.
Earlier, I spoke with Jonathan Rugman, that reporter from Channel 4 News. The video that you shot and the story that you tell is extraordinary, what you are seeing. Tell me a little bit about the pilot that was flying your helicopter and the trip that you took and what we now know has happened today.
Well, the terrible truth, Martha, is that the pilot who flew me up to Mount Sinjar yesterday is now dead because he took off this afternoon on another flight and he didn't come back. The helicopter crashed. Refugees that he was trying to rescue from Mount Sinjar apparently did to the helicopter what they almost did to us yesterday. They tried to overwhelm it and they were clinging to it. And the helicopter tried to take off and overturned with obviously the pilot on board. He was killed. Elisa Rubin from the New York Times, a journalist on board, she was among the injured. And I have to say I spoke to the pilot just minutes before he took off. And he said to me through the helicopter door, "I'm worried that this helicopter is too heavy." And so it proved. This helicopter could not come back safely. It has crashed, and another helicopter had to be sent to pick up survivors from the crash on Mount Sinjar.
You know, I can only say that our prayers are with all of those people. The images that you have shared with the world of these children, of these families, and these are, as you point out in your piece, the lucky ones who actually made it out. And those on that helicopter, including that pilot who is doing heroic work, as are you, I might add, to find these people, to get their story and to tell it to the world. It is extraordinary. What kind of impact has this story had on you, Jonathan?
Well, Martha, I almost dare not think about that because I have a job to do. I have to tell you, we were holding back tears as we filmed that report with refugees surrounding us. They were all in tears that they had survived and that they had got onto the helicopter. And they, like us, were probably thinking of the hundreds of people still on the ground who had not been rescued. It's a difficult thing when a journalist takes part in a humanitarian mission, and when you're on a helicopter where there is only a limited amount of space, and you are taking and you are taking up a space that could be taken by a refugee, but on balance, you say to yourself, well, it's important that I tell this story. The refugees want the story told. The pilot, who is now dead, certainly wanted the story told.
Understood. I just want to point out to folks at home that your audio is breaking up a little bit, but we want to stay with you because this is an extraordinary story of pain and of humanitarian disaster and of an effort to help. How many thousands of people do you believe have been lost on that mountain, and how many thousands remain waiting for help?
Well, that's an impossible question to answer because nobody is actually doing any counting. The Sinjar Mountain is a bit of a misnomer, to be honest. It's a mountain range which stretches for miles and is about 1 mile high. It's incredibly barren. There's hardly any shelter from the sun. The temperature today was 44 degrees. The people who are stuck up there have been up there for 10 to 12 days. I spoke to a man who did manage to get down today. He said he had seen 33 unburied bodies himself. He had buried 2 people. There's no question that a humanitarian disaster has happened and that many people have died up there. And with only 4 helicopters, well, now it's down to 3, of course, because one of them has crashed. With 3 helicopters carrying out an aid mission, only able to carry 20 to 25 refugees at a time, I dread to think what is happening on that mountain as we speak.
How do you believe the situation for the remaining people there ends, knowing what you know about the help that is now attempting at least to come?
Well, some of them are making their way down out of desperation by foot. And do you know where they're into Syria and then make a roundabout journey back into Iraq to get away from the jihadists to the south of them and to get off Mount Sinjar. Those people are arriving in northern Iraq. I saw a steady stream of them crossing in from Syria today. The stream has been going on for days. They don't know where they're going. They don't know if the UN has enough capacity to look after them in refugee camps, which haven't yet been built. Those who are still trapped up there, well, the question is whether foreign aid being dropped by the Americans, by the British, by others, whether that can keep them going, whether aid dropped by these Iraqi helicopters can keep them going before more of them die. So it really is a race against time, Matt.
Jonathan, thank you so much for telling us this story, for sharing your pictures with us. And our thoughts, as I said, go out to the pilot and also to the New York Times reporter who was wounded in that crash today, doing the same kind of work that you've been doing on that mountain in these recent days. Jonathan Rugman, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thanks, Martha.
Well, joining us now.